Okay, hello. So today I would like to talk about an incident regarding Devadatta. That means I do believe it was four. I don't remember it was four or five. The incident where he suggested four or five the kind of austerities or strict monastic rules should be even stricter. He suggested to the Buddha, and I want to explain and elaborate what is exactly the psychology behind Devadatta and why, even without like, even if he doesn't have ulterior motives, why his suggestion is fundamentally bad. So the first thing is like he he put too much focus on the excellence of Dhamma, which is like still it's a good thing, right? You need to not you need to be efficient and effective, and you don't want to yourself getting doubtful towards beneficial teachings, or being too cynical, or uh, confused being too confused yourself. So it's important to, for us Buddhists, right, especially if you understand it really deeply. I don't know if others felt the same way, but I definitely, after doing so much research and practice, I can definitely confidently say that when you pursue excellence in Dharma, usually you will put more emphasis on um, right mindfulness and right intention. Yes, right intention, right? And so that is important. But maybe it was when this thing happened, right? Yeah. Sorry. It was joined the order later, right? The Thera Sariputta and Thera Mahamoggallana joined the order later than Devadatta, right? And he honestly, I also wanted to say it's Devadatta for like to still try to say respects, because like I said, at the end of the day, he is also formally a monk, right? So Thera Devadatta was he was jealous, right? So Thera Devadatta was jealous, right? Because he was too much focus on extreme intention and wrong intention, and also just too much on his like kind of like excellence and training and the mindfulness thing, right? Which, to be fair, he did, because he did have like five psychic powers, which is really powerful, right? That is something usually a person pre-mindful can usually do. So that is something. So that is definitely something worthy of praise, right? Because you cannot, if the five psychic powers is not very good developed, it's very good developed. The only explanation that it's uh it's based off right intention. I'm sorry, not right mindfulness, right intention. I need to clarify that. Right intention, right? But right miracle powers can not only strengthen right view, but also used to right view. When you have a good right view, you also have a good right mindfulness, right? It's kind of like an opposite thing. So, but like when he put too much on the excellence of training, he became too obsessed, and also he was trying to like, he was being desperate for approval of, because his joy come from people not recognizing his talents, which is fair. I can definitely see why. I can relate to quite a bit. It was pretty desperate, but I don't know. Maybe Buddha didn't have a way to handle it. I'm not sure. Maybe it was like some of the people didn't mind read it, but all the mind read was just it was way too difficult to change, and so it's and so I don't know. I don't know. Could they have changed it? I don't know. I don't have psychic powers to read, so I don't know. Maybe in this mind, the mind too much, like, greed, ill will, and delusion is too much, too hard to change, right? Not in the way that they have any way to change it. So at least in their means, like skillful means, right? So maybe they just ignore it, but it could have been better if it managed to be changed, because when, or maybe he was too stubborn or obsessed to understand, right? Because for me, when I research that much, like, I know it's like, oh, this is kind of obsessed behavior, and try to be too desperate. Like, it's completely not wrong to be selfish, but the problem was being too desperate, and now you sacrifice your integrity and being too controversial. I think that's the important part, right? So now it was being too controversial and really trying to, um, you know, really demerit or de-benefit others, right? And also he was too narrow-minded, right? And narrow-minded don't have established enough right views and right speech. Yeah, right speech, right? Because the way he acts in the body language is also kind of wrong speech, right? He's not already not giving actually doing a beneficial suggestion to Buddha, but obviously maybe that was not sure. Maybe he was just being neutral, right? But maybe it was not a precise speech, right? For him, maybe he was suggesting, maybe that suggestion was like itself invalid already because it was like not seasoned speech. It's kind of like idle chatter, right? The way his body language, and he also was like too self-aggrandizing about the when he facing was meeting King Ajatassu, right? And so that one. But this is the first part. I think the psychology, he was too obsessed and too desperate to yearn for others' approval, and it's not wrong to communicate and request it. But I think it was too desperate to the point where it becomes like the integrity falls apart and it becomes too controversial. That is how I think. This is the first part. The second part is that why this suggestion is really bad, right? The way so okay, let's see what he was suggesting, right? He was suggesting stricter monastic rules towards the Buddha, and then asked, yes, we already, I already analyzed the psychology behind Thera Devadatta for you about, how he thinks, how he could have thought, like what is exactly his challenge, right? But you know why this is why this is itself also a bad idea, because the problem was it was coming back to the controversy thing, and now it was kind of like the opposite axis of controversy versus regret, right? Kind of like joyfulness and at joyfulness, right? Kind of like regret. This is I do not want to speak it. Maybe I will speak it in another manner. Okay, so this is something very important, right? And so it's kind of like you don't want to get it too controversial, which is important, right? That's why there were like so many monastic rules in the Buddhism, especially the Patimokkha. Here note, this is why I always support original Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism. Always support first and foremost, because they they don't try to like change that much rules. So this is like the full extent, like okay, what is excellent, what is not excellent, right? This is to make sure people don't get confused, right? People should themselves chase excellence in spiritual progress, but they don't demand others, right? That is the other side is open-mindedness, right? You don't want the open-mindedness to change the rules, but you want to keep them yourself. You be strict to yourself, but when others are not strict, don't try to be gentle and beneficial to others, right? You can still say it straightforwardly, but you have to be gentle and beneficial and modest, and try to, as much as possible, try to do it due time, right? There are sometimes it is not always like in the right time. If it's too late, sometimes that is the another thing. Anyways, why this is a bad idea, right? Why Devadatta suggested. It's kind of like controversy versus regret, right? And it's kind of like, you feel restless if you don't have any controversy. Is good, right? Obviously, the Buddha didn't even say like this is like completely pointless. It was good, right? Absolutely. The 13 austerities. One like I think the thirdly, right? Thirdly, like Mahakassapa, Thera Mahakassapa was literally 13 austerities. So that is very important, right? That is literally the strictest monastic conduct. So he did give praise to that, right? And so he didn't object that people who wanted to practice austerities or strict monastic conduct, or like just, it's kind of like near self-torment, but it's not to the point of self-tormenting, right? This austerities and strict monastic rules does indeed lower a lot of controversy, which is good, don't get me wrong. But most people don't really, right, have that kind of power, right? And maybe this is just my speculation, but maybe you don't need that much training to meet the basic requirements of get winning liberation and the highest bliss, like liberated from stress and suffering, right? And so this is kind of like, if you try to that one and you treat too non-controversial, but then you like have a lot of missed opportunities and you feel regretful about not living the life you wanted, that is like always gonna be really not a really good way to handle things, right? For your own life or something, like you don't have control over your own life, like if you can't even try to pursue your own happiness. So Buddha didn't object that, but Buddha also tried to say, try not to be too controversial when it comes to your, even when it comes to your livelihood, your survival, or your the things you find happy, right? Even among like couples and stuff, like he didn't object too much, just try not to be too controversial, right? And so that is important. So Devadatta was, the problem was that he was trying to demand strict on others. Not only was he like too much emphasis on the spiritual excellence, he was also like, he was trying to like, even if he didn't suggest it in a malicious way, it was itself still a bad idea, because it was like you too much focus on integrity and uprightness and lower too much of it controversial. But if it's too much, if the person didn't want to consent to try to train himself to do that, or herself, then that will be way too much restlessness and regret, and it causes like very um, internal unrest, right? It's kind of like social unrest versus internal unrest, right? You're kind of like your own emotional, your life, about your life, right? A way of living or existing, whichever it is, like either or both, right? And so that is important, I think, to consider this. So yeah, sorry the second part dragged out too long. So this is why I think I personally can second that Thera Devadatta is a bad person, and also why this suggestion, even if he is not being malicious or has ulterior motives, the suggestion itself is inherently bad. So thank you guys for watching today. So I hope you guys have a good evening, and the most importantly is that when you hear what I say, you can either agree or like hope you find this beneficial. So thank you very much. Goodbye.